Dr. Scheinhart here with us today talking about bioenergetics, infoceuticals, and energy fields. We definitely have some questions already on these topics. So let's go in and get started. Dr. Scheinhart, how you doing today?
Very good. I appreciate being on the program. Thanks for having me.
Definitely. Thank you for joining us. And we are very excited to talk about what you are doing professionally. So let's start with the name of the company.
So I founded Geneva Health back about in 2013. And my focus really was, and actually we could talk about the mission that I had, was to empower individuals with affordable technologies and products that can restore optimum health through the body and in the most natural and supportive way. And by doing so, also provide tangible pain relief as well as corrections of any distortions or deteriorations people experience that usually are the foundation of any of their health issues. Now, speaking about your body, you're thinking of you got 70 to 100 trillion cells, right? So the question here is, these cells perform thousands of different biochemical functions every day, but what controls that biochemistry in your body? That's really a big question. Now we have the answer now. It's actually energy, right? So every living, animals, humans on this planet, they give and receive energy, including the cells in your body. This energy forms fields. We call them actually also human body field in humans. And that body field transmits information to your cells on energy fields about what biochemical functions to perform and what order. Right? When this energy is blocked, the information is also blocked and gets distorted, and your body becomes tired and ceases to function the way it should. So we literally have at the core of all health issues an energy issue. That's, we're going to get into this, I'm sure, later on in more detail. But that's kind of the basic. So what we do at Geneva Health is we provide a completely new approach on how to restore health at its source, based on 21st century science, technology, and quantum physics in particular, by looking at the physics underlying the biochemical nature of the body, so we can now accurately read your body field and tune it to engage the body's self-healing abilities so that your body can more easily return to optimum functions and health. And we're trying to do this in the most natural and safe way. So what we do in our clinic, we have a location here in Antioch, in California. We have another one up in Washington State. And we offer a variety of personalized therapeutic solutions that are based on the latest research in holistic therapy modalities. So bioenergetics is one of them, which we clearly focus on. That's a core element in our therapy. We also use pulsed electromagnetic field therapies or vibroacoustic modalities. And we see clients, of all ages. So we work also with children as well as with adults of any age. And we do see a variety of different complex and often long-term chronic health issues that people have. So just to give an example, chronic fatigue, pain syndromes, allergy issues, PTSD, anxiety, MS, ME, ADHD, Alzheimer, even different forms of cancer patients, cardiovascular issues, and then of course men's and women's health issues, and there's plenty of others. And we will actually get to these labels as the Western medicine uses for describing disease states and health issues. We'll talk about that, I'm sure, later on. We also provide remote sessions. So basically we use telehealth to address the health issues and provide our services also to remote clients really across the globe. So we have, of course, a lot of clients here in the US, but we also have international clients that we work with. And another interesting fact, in 2016, we became a certified NES practice. NES Health is really a core of the research that they have done and the system that we use. And in 2018, we also became a partner of Pathways for Veterans and the Certified Research and Wellness Center of them, because that was another thing that I wanted to get involved in to help, our veterans not only in their physical issues, but very often what they need really help for is in their, mental health issues that they have from, their past PTSD, being in the various fields that they operate in. So that's kind of in a nutshell what we do, how I started out, and what we're focusing on.
How about the different stages of cancer? Is there something that's considered a no return in your professional field?
So we need to talk a little bit about, what is the difference basically when it comes to your cells being in a cancer state or in an illness state in general. So a healthy cell would have about 70, millivolt of energy potential, and that can be measured. And when you look under the microscope, that cell looks like a nice inflated air balloon, right? So it's got a nice, structure there. And in comparison to that, a cancerous cell would have a very low energy level. So that could drop to about 2 millivolts. Now that may not sound much, when you look at coming from 70 millivolt to 2 millivolt, but if you multiply this by the 70 to 100, trillions of cells that I explained before, that is a huge energy potential that you have actually lost. And so a part of, not only cancer, but many illness states is, the loss of energy and the drop of energy, the missing energy that's not there. And now you're basically suffering, certain functions of the body won't perform anymore the way they should. And it's leading to all kinds of issues. So from that point of view, when you say, okay, what's the problem with going from stage 1 to stage 4? It's really often two things: a drop of energy, and then you have to assume toxicity levels will go up in that body. Why? Because cell metabolism, meaning nutrients in, waste material and toxins out, doesn't work as well anymore because of the lack of energy that the cells have, right? And then on top of it, what we often find is also issues with heavy metals that come on top of that. Sometimes actually induced by, the medication that people are taking or the various, therapies that they undergo. I mean, think of radiation, think of chemotherapy, right? So toxicity will go up, especially when heavy metals involved. They start to block cell receptors. And so you're literally choking, that cell to death. There's no nutrients coming in, waste material can't go out, energy levels are falling to a level where, the cell is really dying off. Yeah. Wow. So, and in a way, I've had, cases where somebody was brought to me in a stage 4. They were literally on morphine only anymore, and their energy levels were really low. And this can be a very tricky state because the most important part is to do two things with them. First, see if I can get more energy back into them, deal with the toxicity, but at the same time, a person who has a lack of energy is not going to do a whole lot of detox. You see what I mean? So there is a little bit of where you have this issue where you might get to this state where of a point that you call it the point of no return, right? Right. Where it's just so, toxicity is high, energy levels are low, and returning from a state like this is not always easy. And in some cases, it's too late. Yeah.
Right. And, low energy is not just for cancer patients. It's for so many different things. It's across the board. People our age, for example, you can't get them to go out to the park and play like we used to 20, 30 years ago. It doesn't happen. But do you agree that we should be able to our whole lifespan?
So, yeah, I mean, it's interesting you bring this up, right? Because we are often, sort of promoting the idea about energy for life, right? And that's also what you will find, on our website. And I talk a lot about, different energy sources. Also, where's your energy coming from? How do you maintain it? And how does it affect, one's health state? Which is really what bioenergetics is about, right? When right. You ask the question, so what is bioenergetics? Well, it is literally the context of how energy is involved and plays a role in your health state, in how your biochemistry works, in how basically all your functionality is set up and supposed to work in your body. So how does it maybe differ with various approaches that we see in the Western medicine? we get a lot of people, or I would say very frequently, people ask us way in the beginning, so what is this, type of therapy or modalities that you use? Can that even help me in my specific disease, right? So they would have, whatever they had been sort of diagnosed from their primary care physician. And obviously, we get to see a lot of different conditions. And our answer really often is, yeah, we have to basically first understand what is the idea of diagnosing in the disease itself, because the root causes are not often found in symptoms, which is really what, the Western medicine approach really uses, right? I mean, in their disease model, when someone is struggling with any symptoms, they basically use a box in a sense where they run all these different tests. They might do blood tests, urine tests, MRIs, and whatever you have, and sometimes even some other diagnostics that they do. But ultimately, right, they basically look at the symptoms and then put a label on that. The issue really is you can't you can't just basically label the same symptoms for everybody to be the same root cause, because everybody might have similar symptoms, but the root cause of why these symptoms are showing up is different in different individuals. Yeah.
Okay.
So in a way, you can't call it good or bad, but at least that's what Western medicine does, right? And of course, when there's emergency situations, we all like to get that immediate care. But the question has to be, for chronic issues that a lot of people have, is that still the right approach? And often we find it's not, and that's why people come and actually see us. So that's where it all starts, and that brings us ultimately to a case of what is then bioenergetic, and how does it work, and how does it actually deal and address root causes, right?
Right. One thing I'd like to comment on as we use that segue for your profession and the difference between Western medicines is that I feel that Western medicine is a practice. And because of that, they test a lot of things on us. And exactly what you said, everything's in a box. You label something and it's for everybody. And they're practicing that in order to get better. It's not to take away from that profession, but it's to look at it more on what it really actually is. And I'm really feeling more for your profession and that type of science, because it's going to the actual root of everything. And I feel like Western medicine never did that in the first place. It's questionable why, for the fact that it's the newest version, but it's the worst version. Why did we steer away from that in the first place? So just using that as a segue, let's go into your explanation of bioenergetics, energetics, and how it is different to Western medicine and the approach that you've taken.
Yeah, of course. So, when we look at Western medicine, right, as I said before, it largely focuses on the chemistry of your body, right, which is really where drugs are interacting with. Bioenergetics, on the other hand, focuses on what actually drives your chemistry, and that is energy. The presence and movement of energy drives everything in your body. So when there's a problem, it starts right there with energy, as I explained a little bit before on the example of the cancer cell. So we're not referring to a metaphysical energy here, but it's the energy particles that we know of, like electrons, right? Whose exchange between molecules is the basis of biochemistry. So energy, like this, is influenced not by direct contact between energy particles, but by the frequencies they generate. So there has been, a very smart scientist in the past. We probably all know him, Nikola Tesla. What he said? He said, if we want to understand the universe better, we need to think about vibrations, frequencies, and energy. And he was like right on the mark. And that's really what we also focus on. So let me, continue to explain, bioenergetics. And so I can give you an example. So in a way, when somebody waves at you with their hand in a slow, fashion, right? Then you would think, oh, that's basically a greeting, or they just seem to get, your attention in a friendly way. In another time when somebody's waving you very frequently, right, or in a high frequency, then that's usually an alert. In some way, you would at least assume that. So as you can see, just even that example shows different frequencies will have different reactions in our body. Yeah? And this is why, for example, also electromagnetic frequencies, so EMF, Wi-Fi, cellular communication, all types of non-natural frequencies. And microwave is another one, by the way. So basically, they have a biological effect on us. I mean, there has been enough studies now where at least the majority of people, at least, understand and know that Wi-Fi and these type of radiations will have a negative effect on us.
I don't know about that one yet, Dr. Scheinhart. That's
Yeah.
questionable. We talk about that stuff all the time in my circle, and I like how you brought that up. And I just kind of want to bring this up for our viewers, our audience. That are you creating a safe environment in your home, not only for yourself but for your family, your children? Do you have a microwave? Do you microwave your food? What do you do in your home environment? These are things that your profession doesn't mix with, because you're talking about correcting as opposed to disrupting. So it's our responsibility, and these companies say this to us. It's not our problem, it's your problem to understand the facts and the truth and to make the decisions yourself to use our products. What I hope is that what you had just said comes true for the majority soon.
The difficult part is always what tools are being used and how things are being assessed. And so when you look at the tools that are available to Western medicine, they have a problem in correlating the effects of radiation on your body. And just because of that, they seem to kind of stay away from this, and in the past at least called it always out that this is nonsense and is not happening. But that's just literally because they don't have any tools to really assess this. Once you bring tools to the table, like we have, and this is certainly only a beginning, of what, eventually is to come as far as assessing, energy influences on our body. But at least from what we have today available already, we do see these impacts. We do see, on how these exposures to radiation start to make changes and shifts in your body. Because as I said before, every cell creates a field, and that field comes, with information. And it's also frequencies that are basically being used in intercommunication between different cells. And once these fields, I should actually mention Rupert Sheldrake. He's a leading biologist, yeah, and he has done a lot of work, what he refers to as morphic fields, which is, very, very much the same when we talk about the human body field, yeah. And he basically, in his research, found that these fields have one incredible ability, which is they can record and memorize patterns. That's how we learn also, because as we grow up from early childhood until adulthood, these patterns that we're exposed to are basically being stored in our body. And so you can look at the body field almost like your operating system, right? Every matter comes with a field. They cannot exist on their own, and they always come along, together, because there's an interdependency. Why? Because the matter itself doesn't know what to do, right? I mean, the cell is basically saying, so what do you want me to do? How do I interact with my neighbor? How do I interact as a group, right? So there has to be information somewhere that directs exactly these functions that take place in our body, and that includes on how our biochemistry operates. Yeah,
Right.
And so in a way, that's why I refer to it as our operating system, because I think a lot of people have, they can relate to this, looking at a computer, looking at their smartphone, and you have hardware and you have energy in the form of a battery, of course, with a smartphone, or in the computer's case, connected to the power outlet. And we have energy storages as well, right? So it's not just only food that basically delivers energy to us, but it's also the environment, photons from the sun, or there is what's called the 0-point energy field. This is, of course, a little more, tricky to explain, because it gets into the whole realm of quantum physics. but energy is always around us, right? And it's usually transported through frequencies, right? How does energy travel? Well, there's some either photons that deliver, an information, or in general you have waves, frequencies that transport, energy. So in a way, we're tapped into not only food, but we're tapped also into the environment where we get our energy. And what happens is these informations that exist within our fields, within the human body field, can get distorted because, as I said, when it long enough exposed to certain patterns, it will adopt these patterns. But in the case of a Wi-Fi, in the case of other radiations, it basically causes a distortion or causes a complete change of the pattern that's supposed to be there that you need in order for your functionality in your body, right?
Right.
And so it's easy to understand with radiation, but it goes beyond that, because when you think about toxins, yeah, of course, most people would think of, the biochemistry that the toxin is causing your problem with. But the truth is, it's actually the frequencies that these toxins are vibrating. They are causing you in your body, again, these distortions, these, exchange of patterns, and leading to essentially the defect in your operating system. Yeah? And by the way, we haven't yet talked about this, but there's another category that I would say 70 or 80% of chronic issues that people have are rooted in past shock and trauma or emotional stress that had been extreme in that situation that they experienced it, and that leaves them with an energetic distortion that then later on manifests within some physical issue that they experience. And with the tool set that we use in our clinic, we have the ability to kind of look back on, so what type of event that might have been, and what type of emotions were actually triggered or distorted at that time, and that cause you what particular problem now. So there's a linkage that we have, between a specific type of event, specific emotion that was triggered, and where in the body you will end up having problems sooner or later. That could be the day after the event happened. It could be weeks, months, or even years later. Yeah, but we can see from the scan of your body field, literally, what has happened, and in what physical location you will probably end up having problems with.
What are some leading causes for people to have a low or blocked energy field? And you've mentioned a few things, and you kind of went in that direction. And you have here a look at disease diagnosis and cures. Can you talk a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, so as I said, we don't work with disease labels, because the underlying issue, right, of what's going on with a person is usually at the energetic level. Now, of course, it will cause problems at the biochemistry. Why? Because when you have issues at the physics layer, then that will also bubble up in a way, right, to the next layer, which is biochemistry. And actually, I like to talk a little bit about this layer, because you can't fix anything in the layer below, right? That's the sort of primary understanding. So the biochemistry essentially rides at on top of the physics layer. So therefore, any of the pharmaceuticals that are really trying to address at the biochemistry level issues, they can't fix anything that's basically wrong at the physics layer. And this is where we talk about energy flow, and all the interaction that basically your biology has with energy. And so literally, unless you get to that layer, and unless you have means by addressing what's going on that layer, you can patch things up, yeah, for the moment, but you really can't address or heal the actual root cause. And so in a way, as I said early on, everybody comes to us, of course, because they come from their doctor and they have been diagnosed with, X, Y, and Z. And then they would ask us, okay, can you help with that? And, my first answer is, of course we can. But does it happen, within the first month, or will it take a little longer? Yeah, that's, then depends on the individual and the, history as to what their medical condition is, and a lot of other, factors that, of course, we discuss, with our clients. But generally speaking, what we do when we do the scan, and it's a non-invasive scan, as a matter of fact, and you can think of it's like a computer mouse device where you put your hand on, and it runs for a couple of seconds, and it does, I think, over 300 different, wellness points, and that goes from basic assessment of energy levels to how do you tie it into getting energy from your food, from your environment, nutritional facts, any malabsorptions, what type of toxins may be involved, all the way to assessment of your meridians, how they do in particular organ systems and functions, of course. We also look very closely on the immune system, the various factors of the immune system, and other functions that are really important to our survival, right? And so once we go through this, and in our sessions, we basically not only talk about that, but we talk also about what other things affect, the health situation, lifestyle changes, right? I mean, of course, when somebody is putting bad food down, their throat, then, eventually you will have digestive issues, and other things can stem from that as well. So we talk about not only what's going on, we see at the energy level, but also what are the things that someone can do in order to improve not only the current situation, but also have a more long-term, from a preventive care approach, also a better life and better energy and better health, as they continue. And then there's as I said, toxins. So there's often a discussion about what to do about these toxins. So we'll talk about it as well. So that's why we call it almost like a total wellness session, because not only it entails, taking a look at the root causes, but also discuss, other things that one can do and can take in their life. We talk about plastic. We see more common cases where microplastic issues are involved. It wouldn't show up like that, but it shows up different digestive problems and, point us to heavy metals like tin, for example. And then there's some other, habits that we have that may be unhealthy and that can contribute certainly to other things. So it's the scan, of course, and the assessment as far as, the energetic distortions and is a core, but then we have all these other elements involved as well. And we, of course, look then into this area, we call them brain holograms. So these are 4 particular areas in your brain, and each one of them has specific emotions associated with them. And that's when we get a look as to what type of past shock and trauma or emotional stress, is contributing, to your current health situation, and in what particular, physical location you would have issues coming from that. I have one interesting example, back pain, right? It's a common issue people deal with, and in some cases they've gotten so much used to it already that they cope with it, and then don't even consider it anymore as a health issue that they have. But many people do. And very, very frequently, right, people have, especially in the lumbar area. And so, for example, once we engage with the client, and basically just tell us a little bit as to what's going on, then they would mention, oh, this is probably, I lifted something heavily, or I did some exercise, or twisted my back. That's probably where it's coming from. And I said, okay, so how long has this been going on, right? And then they would say, well, I got this for years, right? Well, if you have this for years, then it's probably not going back to, exercise or anything. When normally you come back from that, it will heal and your body's fine. But then we take a look at it and we find, in that area, when we look at past shock and trauma events or emotional stress, that particular area is often linked when people worry about their financial situation. Yeah. This is just one key element, right? There's other things that are tied to this too. And as soon as we address that particular area, but more from the view of, an energetic distortion and clearing out, some of these past shock and traumas or emotional stress, all of a sudden their back pain is gone. And we see this often. And of course, this is just one example as to how other things are linked to our emotions, right? We cannot understate or overstate, I should say, not understate, but overstate that there is a very close relationship between our emotional state and what we go through and stress and so forth that is causing, health issues and then manifest in a chronic way.
So informative, so many points that I've talked to people, not that I've ever taken a class and have earned a doctorate in what you're talking about, but it's through reading, it's through communicating through your elders, it's seeing the patterns repeat themselves over and over and over again. It's being careful with your diet. Everything that you say is lined up. with what I truly believe in. And that's definitely not why you're here. You're here to give the audience another perspective.
Another example, which just recently happened, and I think, to support some of the things you said and help actually your audience understand how radiation or EMF, has an effect on you. I have a person I work with in Montana, and he had essentially chronic fatigue. He wasn't really not functioning. I mean, he was tired. He really had no energy, and overall, he just had a lot of different problems. And so we talked about EMF and radiation, right? And I said, do you have means of measuring, how your EMF exposure is at home? Try to switch off the Wi-Fi, and see what happens. So he went to a very drastic measure, and he turned off the entire electricity for his house, right? So yeah, and I think you know what's coming, right? So he turned it off, and he called me the next day and said, this was the first night I slept like, I never slept before. I woke up, rested. I woke up with more energy, and it's just unbelievable, that change that I just experienced that one night by turning off electricity. And of course, that means he's got a big issue in his house with, EMF maybe coming out of his walls, where maybe grounding hasn't been done correctly at the house, and some other things.
We live in an environment that's just polluted constantly. There is no break in our sensory organs and receptors. It's complete chaos. What you're offering, absolutely 100%, is the information and cause of why this is happening. And it needs to be recognized as not an alternative, but the actual way that we were designed, and to look at things as finally coming out with all of the opportunities we have to speak around the world instantaneously. There is good with that. There's the negative that comes with it. But speaking to you, this is the positive side. This is one of the few positive sides that we get. So you talked about information of the body, the bioenergetic field. Let's get into infoceuticals.
Yeah, so I'm sure your audience has probably never heard that term. No. But so there's the part about information, right? And then of course pseuticals, as far as pharmaceuticals, and we just switched the term from pharma to info, because it's really about information medicine, right? The remedies that we're talking about, and in general bioenergetics, because we talked about your body field being like your operating system, and patterns, information that essentially gets distorted or corrupted, by all these other influences, which we already covered. So what these infoceuticals do, and I have to say, basically, there's over 30 years of research from Ness Health that went into the system that we use in order to do the body field assessment, and into the remedies, the infoceuticals. So this is not a development that comes from us, from Geneva, but it is essentially work that has come from Ness Health. But we use them, of course, within our practice. And this is very interesting, because following this research, right, the discovery has a lot to do about water. And when you think about water, 70% of us is liquid water. And if you count the water molecules, it's actually almost like 98%, where it's a really high number. So we're literally a water being, right? Right. And the interesting part is this: the water that is in our body is not like your regular tap water. So it's not H2O. Yeah, it has a slight different chemical structure, H3O2, and it is in a state that you can describe almost like a gel state. So it's between liquid water and frozen water. And when it's in that state, it has the ability to memorize. And that's really important, because we need that memory capacity of storing patterns, transporting, frequencies, and so forth. So that capability from water is really important. There's a lot of great work that Professor Gerald Pollack up in the Washington State University has done in this research of, he calls it the fourth state of water, exactly that gel state between liquid and frozen. and the properties that water has in this context. So memory is one of them, but then also towards hydrophilic surfaces, or easier to the cell walls on the outside as well as on the inside, it has a negative charge. So we are literally a living battery, right? And that charge has to be maintained. And one way is, for example, grounding. So getting electrons from Earth, which is free, so it's a free energy source, you can literally, prime and charge this water, and so does actually also the photons from the sun. Yeah. So the basis of this infoceutical is structured water that it was, has to have in order to memorize the patterns that we want to imprint into, that water that becomes the remedy. Now, uh, the way these remedies are being produced is proprietary to NIST, but I can tell you at least a couple of things about some general attributes of it. So there's colloidal minerals in that structured water. So you have Himalayan crystal salt, magnesium and potassium salt, but colloidal minerals means you can't see them, right? They're very small, but these minerals are basically getting imprinted with the information. Now, what is the information? In the simplest form, think about a computer system where you have zeros and ones, right? And a certain combination of zeros and one represents some type of information. It's of course a little more complex than that, but just to kind of simplify things. And these information patterns are then represented by different frequencies. So you have a combination of different frequencies that are getting imprinted onto these minerals that then are basically inside of the structured water. So that's kind of what the remedy is made of, right? But the key factor is here that structured water is able to carry information or resonance like this. We can use structured water to carry corrective resonance into the body field, right? That's the key. So when we provide a strong and stable signal, so that's what I told you before, Wi-Fi, longer exposure could also mean it's destructive. But in what we do with the remedies is exactly the opposite. We know exactly what pattern has to go into certain areas of your body to correct that distortion that exists. And by exposing your body to the remedy, which you take orally, generally speaking, unless you a sensitive person, then you might do it topical. So we work with those too. But they basically represent then a very strong and stable signal to the body, these patterns, right? And the body will listen to it and then adopt it in the same way as it does to the bad stuff. That's just, the inherent nature of these morphic fields and their ability to memorize and store patterns. So in a way, this introduces a precise resonance pattern affecting, these targeted aspects of the human body field. And with just a few drops a day, which is what normally we do, taken in a glass of water, you can begin to restore and correct, messaging throughout the body and supporting, the body's ability to heal itself. So what we really do is we enable, right? And we don't change anything, but what we do is we enable the body's ability to come back with its own self-healing capabilities, which we have an incredible body. It can do a lot of different things when it's functioning correctly, right?
Right.
So in a way, what we do in the form of therapy after we've done the analysis is really to make support energy corrections, distorted patterns, so that the body can return to full functionality, and then the body itself will basically kick back in there, its own self-healing capability will kick in, and that's literally how the healing process can start.
Did the earth, I should say, provide this type of coded water before all of the pollutions and the destruction has occurred? Is it still a thing for us to gain from Mother Earth, or have we completely removed ourselves from that? Or is this a whole different type of science that's not from nature, but restores us back to nature?
Well, it's kind of in between, right? So to maybe address the first part, there is a study which was actually done by various researchers in Germany. And what they found is that because of that memory capacity of water, it memorizes everything it gets in touch with. Yeah, just think about this, at the moment. So, of course, in a clean, organic environment, that's all great news. But in an environment where we toxify our environment by, plastic that goes into, rivers, oceans, by other type of, toxins that we basically put out there, we are now also taking away or negatively sort of influence the ability for the water, if it would have been just exposed only to natural frequencies and natural substances. So we have actually taken away for us that ability to just consume water and its great influences straight from nature. Yeah, because what you most likely will get is a certain level of these other toxifications that the water had been exposed to.
The overall destructive forces that we've brought to the table as modern human beings. To simply reiterate what you just said, you are what you eat. We have destroyed our water, our drinking water in the world, and everything that is in it is what you drink, and as a result, you are that. Prior to that, what you simply said was that Mother Earth was in its pristine natural condition. It did what it was supposed to do. And when you drank that, you were of the earth. That's what we are. We've removed ourselves so far from that you and this type of science have come into play in this world today to revive and to keep us from moving in the wrong direction.
The process of how we sort of identify what are the corrective patterns that we do need in order to restore function in our body, that's not natural, right? That's the part we start to kind of engage now in that correction process. But as far as adapting and receiving and correcting what's wrong in your body, that still follows a natural and native behavior in us, right? So it's not like you're adding pharmaceuticals or any other toxins in you. We're literally basically just restoring these incorrections that are in place. And then once that takes place, the body takes over in its all natural behavior and uses its self-healing abilities to address these issues that are going on.
Let's make changes. Dr. Scheinhart is here to express the need for that through his profession. And with that being said, can you give us some final words?
Yeah, of course. I mean, if anyone that is dealing with any chronic, even complex or possible long-term health issues, or would like to optimize their energy and performance, or is seeking a natural and effective approach to prevent even serious health issues before they occur, then you've come to the right place. Let us help you restore your health and energy. You can find more information about us on our website at juneva.com. That's JUNEVA.com. And of course, there may be some additional information we're going to have the audience get through you if they want to get in touch with us.
Thank you so much for your participation in this interview. All praises to our ancestors, the indigenous peoples of the world, and everything we're talking about. We're remembering them today with this conversation. Thank you, Dr. Scheinhart. I appreciate you, and we will be in touch.
You're welcome. Thank you very much for having me.